Hello, everyone. The first week of the LCK regular season is in the books, in which we've got you covered here on Let's Cover Korea. dGon alongside Wolf. And Wolf, with this week, we are going to divide it up into three buckets. It's what we know after week one, what we don't know after week one, and what we maybe know, right? Because we had results that we just did not expect. Probably the worst prediction rate out of like most
It's
recent history.
it's definitely one of the worst, and week 1 predictions often go pretty poorly when you don't because it's the beginning of the year, you don't really have a good read on a lot of roster shifts, especially in terms of our bottom teams. But when it's top teams losing to teams you thought were bottom teams, that's when it gets really weird. But the other thing to consider is for the last 2 years, we've had the LCK Cup and also actually Kespa Cup of additional information about these teams before we go into the LCK. So our predictions should be a lot more accurate than they would have been in a spring season in January in past years where you're just going in completely blind. We thought we had a lot of information. We thought we knew a lot, but we were pretty surprised with some of the results that we saw this week.
Definitely. So if you at home think you know or don't know, come listen with us and join in. And we'll start with the knows. Who do we know, Wolf, after week one? Unfortunately, this might be the only time we mention them in the podcast. It's Kiwoom DRX. We
Yeah, we
definitely
think we
know
know. We know. It's not good. It's not
it's
good.
not good. Yeah, it's not good.
And it's such a
uh,
shame. It's such a shame because
yeah, definitely.
this roster has so much potential in it, right? Like, obviously, I'm not saying this team is going to be a top 4 team. I don't think anyone is expecting that. I don't think DRX sold that to Kiwoom when they were like, "Look, you should give us a lot of money and be our naming sponsor." I don't think that, not to mention that DRX is an org in multiple esports, including Valorant, where they're quite relevant. But like the situation for them now is it's not just a Geo in the bottom lane problem. It's Rich looking really, really poor in his individual performances. Like we
Nice.
mentioned it in our opening. Yeah, I know, not intentional, but there you
That
go.
was not intentional. That was so
No, it's not intentional.
good.
He's just his performance has been poor, which is the antithesis of his name, which is funny, and he is also down on gold a lot as a result. So yes, poor. Um, is his Twitch chat name. But like we talked about this in our previous episode of Let's Cover Korea, where we were like, okay, Rich, a little bit inconsistent, sometimes making some baffling decisions and costing his team big. And now he's just not getting out of the laning phase. Like now he's losing big early and making big mistakes or finding all in angles that fail and getting punished for it. Um, but like we do have to talk about the fact that in Gio's opening game, he looked terrible against
Yeah,
DNS. I mean, they're playing against Duckdom, who is a world's finalist, right? And it's not an easy 2v2 per se, but he just looked awful. And we learned further in DNS's series later on in the week against Taeyun, by the way, that like he's actually not looking very good, but he bodied Jiwoo in the first series. We found out later, again, this is speculation, or not even speculation, it's officially, stated by Jiu, right? At least that's from what I found from surfing Korean community, that Jiu is sick, and that's why Lazyfield was playing. I wasn't able to talk to Kanyang from Kiwoom DRX to actually confirm this or not. And generally, also, when I hear stuff like this behind the scenes, I don't confirm because it's not necessary, unless I'm told I can. But my point being, Gio claims he was sick, which would explain a lot.
yep.
But also sometimes people say that when weird stuff happens because it's better for their image and their brand. Like if you have the worst game ever, like you can have your Johns. You guys familiar with the term Johns, the Smash Bros
Johns.
term?
Oh
Like
man,
Gio can
yeah.
have his Johns, right? Where he's like, well, I was a little sick and like my keyboard was a little squeaky that day, and so it was just a little bit tough. But obviously any pro player would like to preserve their image. Looks like he was sick though. I choose to believe him. Lazyfield looked even worse, but like Lazyfield is just still not that experienced. Doesn't have a lot of reps in the LCK. Outside lane tried his best, and like that's what Lazyfield was when he played last year. We're like, okay, bad laning phase, great outside the lane. Similar story here. It doesn't look like much has changed. But that's unfortunately in the LCK. A big part of winning the game is losing, or is not losing desperately and horribly the bottom 2v2. So like you got UCal is not playing that well. You have Rich looking like a disaster. The bottom lane, maybe it can be salvaged if Jiwoo comes back and looks like his form that we saw at the end of LCK Cup, because his form definitely fit the Kiwoom DRX logo where it was going up and to the right. When we got to the end of
Yeah.
LCK, it was looking a lot better, but he just looked really rough in that first series. I just don't know what this team does. Like, what do they do next? Like, how UCal isn't suddenly just going to become a top player. He has moments, he has flashes, right? And Gio's ceiling, I think, even though he got better, like he didn't even hit his best ceiling, I think, when he was in his early Nongshim days. So how does this team get better or improve when there's no talent available to sign? Like, I think we know and unanimously think as a LCK global talent squad that this team is our 10th place team right now, based on what Bro showed us in week 1. We're like, okay, Kiwoom is it, sadly. They are
Yeah.
probably our worst team.
Yeah. I'm a little bit more forgiving on Lazy Field because that game that he subbed in, the second series that they played against Dplus KIA was just it was a team loss, right? It felt like a draft loss and a team loss, and just nothing happened. And all of a sudden there was a 7,000 gold lead for Dplus KIA. Everyone except Willer, I think, was guilty of just playing terribly. No one more than Rich, where the top lane just became a massive hole. And it UCal is like last year's Fisher, right? Where you would have like high, kind of like mid-level like highs and then like a pretty deep floor. You thought UCal's highs could be a little bit higher than Fisher's, and his floor is a little bit higher than Fisher's. And right now we're just getting the floor of it. And I think that can change a little bit here, Wolf. Like I don't think he's going to be top 4 mid, but I do think that he has performances that can get him up there. It is Rich. Rich is the issue. Rich's current form is the issue, and there were moments last year when he was the one that could drag him across the line, and now he is the reason why they're losing. And hopefully Jiwoo was sick, because Jiwoo was also another reason why they're losing. Usually you can have one reason why you're losing and it's fine, but if you have 2 reasons why you're losing, tough. Super, super tough. And that's why when they put Lazy Feel in and it felt like the same issues happened, I was like, oh, okay, this isn't just
Yeah,
a
it's not
Jiwoo
Lazy
problem.
Field's fault that Rich is getting solo killed. You know what I mean? Like Lazy Field might be 25 CS down, but like I don't think he has really any impact on that top lane 1v1 where there was no jungle attention. So
Yeah.
everything is going wrong, like you said. Every piece is failing. And UCal to me in his best days is such a strong, stable mid laner where he can win lane, make an impact in team fights, but he's not the BDD type where you see him like save the game 3 times in a row. Like he doesn't have that element of clutch. He's just a really strong, solid mid laner. Like in the past, he would make a crazy play and jump out of his chair, right? And like we saw like his KT days a long time ago, he was actually that guy. Like he was the giga, I can make the crazy outplay, almost silly play work. Like he was
Yeah.
almost like the barrel of mid lane where you're like, this shouldn't be possible, but like he pulled it off somehow. But now he's just like a fairly consistent mid laner that is LCK level, but he can't patch all the holes, And
Correct.
sometimes he even
Correct.
has his own weak performances. So that's my big issue with UCal. Like it's not his fault, but he
Yeah.
can't save it either.
Let's move forward to Dplus KIA. I was kind of surprised that we spent that much time on Kiwoom, but I think it's because it's a team where it is full of potential and we want to see them get there.
And they just got
Wolf, but
investment, that's the sad thing.
yeah,
But anyway,
yeah. We also see a lot of potential in the moves that Dplus KIA have made, but we have them in the no category. And for me, Wolf, it's now been, I don't know what, like 5 series where ShowMaker is not show making, and now they are the potential team because they've started building around ShowMaker and putting in the younger products, and there's Shiwu there. Okay, Lucid there, Lucid Fan Club. Okay, now you're going with Smash, and then obviously the youngest guy in career. And career looked rough in the first series, and thankfully they got a heavy dose of Kiwoom DRX in their most recent series, but it didn't look better. It wasn't them winning, it was Rich giving them a win. So to me, I feel like we know they are a middle of the pack team who will lose to teams that are better than them and can punish teams who will give them wins. That's Dplus KIA in my eyes.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's a lot of problems around shot calling, which has always been an issue for this team, but like career, his laning has been really weak. I think he gets, I don't know, this is maybe a bit too early of a read, but he is a rookie, so this is kind of my vibe, I guess. He seems to get nervous and kind of choke a little bit sometimes, even though in other times he kind of calms down and has a good game. I always go back to the Kespa Cup, like Aftershock Nami, where he's clearly just like either so focused on something else, so nervous, or so locked in to like trying to make sure he doesn't fail, like he's in his own headspace that he just forgets to change his runes, you know, like and
Mhm.
ends up with Aftershock on Nami. It's moments like that as a pro where like if it happens to Keria, you're like, honest mistake. Like, you know, Keria obviously knows what to do. He knows what runes there are. But if it happens to a rookie who's had some like really shaky performances, you're like, okay, he's nervous, right? You're like, okay, this is bad. Like this probably like I don't think I'm reading too much into it to think that like he definitely has days where he just kind of is overthinking things or in his own head. Sometimes I almost feel like you could see it in his walkouts, right? When he walks out with the team.
Yeah.
As he's just so inexperienced compared to everybody else, even though Shu and Lucid are still relatively new players. Smash as well. I mean, frankly, he's practically a rookie. Did play last year, obviously, during the Gumayushi Smash early debacle. And
Saga.
I just think that, like, because career looks so out of sorts, Smash's confidence has gone down. And then ShowMaker isn't like ShowMaker always looks really good at the beginning of the year. But the beginning of the year kind of got stretched a little bit, right? When LCK is starting in April.
Yeah.
And we had Kespa Cup and we had LCK Cup. And then he had to go to Hong Kong. So he played in effectively like an international tournament. Like he had to travel. Like, you know, he went out there, played some extra series. And he just seems to get burnt out. I also heard about this, by the way. It depends on your read on this. Like every person I've talked to about this has a different opinion. But ShowMaker is basically doing this like challenge right now in solo queue where he's trying to win with like every champion in the mid lane.
That's
And
awesome.
like
I love that.
it's cool. It's champion pool building. It's like it's a really fun challenge. It's great content. But he's also like on his main account like grinding the hell out of just like trying to win with meta stuff. I'm like, is this wise to just be like taking on this crazy extreme project while also trying to maintain your form? Like, does it help your form? I'm personally on the side, which I think I'm in the minority of this, so that I think this is probably not a wise choice for
Yeah,
ShowMaker.
boo,
Because
boo.
but
You're being such a
he gets so
boomer.
burnt out. No, he gets so burnt out. Like I think it's fun content and it's great for the off season, right? I mean, I would love watching this, you know, back in like November when you're not at Worlds and you're kind of chilling, right? But right now I'm kind of like maybe don't be doing that while you need to be maintaining your form. Actually, maybe just take a break a little bit and make sure you're still you know, scrimming properly and you've got your head in the main meta champions instead of like trying to win with Fizz or whatever in high elo. Because it's like win rate is insane and he's actually like really highly ranked from what I've been seeing and what I've heard with this little account mini game he's playing.
Yeah.
I just don't know, like, if I see his individual performances drop like they have already compared to, like, when he was God tier just a month and a half ago, I'm like, it maybe, like, I know Atlas would say this is exactly what he needs because Showmaker's form drops off because his burnout is not because his hands are tired or his wrists are tired, it's because he gets bored. Like, that's, like, the Atlas take, and I think that has kind of been proven to be true over the years sometimes when Showmaker gets bored, so maybe, like, I don't know, playing all these random mid lane champions in this challenge is, like, what keeps Showmaker actually from not getting bored and stops the burnout, so maybe my read is completely wrong here, but either way, I think we know D plus because their top jungle isn't strong enough to carry. Showmaker's inconsistent, and Career just hasn't figured it out yet. And you asked the question to me off broadcast, you know, as like a kind of rhetorical question, but like more of a thinking question of how long do we give Career? You asked me this a few days ago, and
I
that's kind
did,
of the
yeah.
question I think everyone is wondering right now. Like, how long is he just going to be? Well, he's still figuring it out because if you want to be a Legend Group team, it's going to have to be soon. You know, they ended up going 1-1 this week, but again, they beat Kiwoom, which Didn't even look that clean, frankly, even though it's a 2-0. It was a bit of a messy series. Dplus kind of threw away some of their win cons. They ultimately still won, but I
Yeah.
am not feeling good about Dplus being a top 4 contender, let's say. I think that's what I think we can confidently know, is that this team is probably, at this moment in time, not on a trajectory to go to Worlds.
Here's their schedule too. Next week, week 2, they play probably their closest competition in Hanwha Life Esports, and then Gen.G. Then they play first place KT in World Champion T1, and then they play their maybe next competition. I don't know. It's week 4. It's all the way out. Bro, and then the DN Automotive Supers. After week 1, you have them maybe over Bro, and maybe that's it. Maybe Hanwha. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't. It stresses me out. Actually, no, I know. It's the fact that you can only say you can maybe have them over Bro confidently, and maybe the Supers, maybe that week 4. But the next 2 weeks seems like 2 weeks of losing, and they've already spent 2 years building up those 2 young talents. And so now is the time where it was supposed to pay off. And that's why I asked Career, because theoretically it's like, okay, well, we've already spent 2 years building up those talents. Let's get Career up to date. We feel like pretty confident in Smash, but now Smash is suffering and the team can't function in a bot lane centric meta where it's important to win lane. It's important once you get a lead to punish. And when you get a lead, don't throw it, like what's happening with Hanwha. So we feel like we have that guy, but then the other guy that supports to support our guy isn't doing it. So, and we've seen how difficult it is to try and get it right at the support pool with KT when they had 2 guys, and then it was their 3rd guy who was the guy. So that was why I posed that question, because I want to give him time. I want to give him time, but I'm more excited about the flashes we've seen about Namgung than what we've seen out of Career so far. Those were the 2 new rooks that are getting their shot. So that is Dplus KIA. We know them to be a middle of the road team, and they're going to go as high as Career allows them to go. We
We got
also
2 more
know
teams.
about the
Yeah,
classics here.
we got 2 more teams that we know. I think I personally want to start with the T1 of the 2 teams we have left that we talk about that we know.
Yeah.
T1, they lost to KT, right, at the beginning of the week, which was a shock to a lot of people, I think, given what KT's form was at LCK Cup, as well as the fact that effort was starting, which all made us like, we were all unanimously predicting that KT would lose 2-0. Like, we didn't put that in the scoreboard, but I don't think a single person thought they'd take a game.
Nope.
And then, like, that was before we saw effort was starting. And when effort was starting, everyone was like, "Man, it's gonna be bad." and then, and then effort, he didn't pop off. Like, he played in Chandra supports, it was fine. He played like a Seraphine. He did a good job, but it wasn't about him. It was just about KT playing together well. And Perfect was the real star there. And
Crazy, it was perfect. I'm such a perfect, like, hater is such a strong word. Remember, I was like, is this really about to be the worst top laner going to Worlds? Is he worse than everyone else? And then he made it to the finals. And then this is why I get so frustrated with perfect.
yeah,
He could be very good. I'm still in a little denial that
so
he's the best. And then
I'm
he
saying
can
all
just stink. And he's
yeah, I'm saying all this because we'll get to Perfect a little bit more later, but like I'm saying all this because it's a defense of T1 losing 0-2 to KT with bad drafts. And what did we see from T1 in their final series that they played this year against like the previous series before this, which was weeks and weeks before, like a month and a half before, against Dplus? Bad drafting, got reverse swept. Like, they had
yep.
really bad compositions. Dplus reverse swept them. It looked really bad. It was a tragedy for T1. They didn't go to Hong Kong. And like, after watching what happened in Hong Kong, I still feel like T1 would have performed better than Dplus there, but they had a really bad read in that best of 5. And they then had pretty weak read. Like, they went for the Anivia pick. It wasn't great. But like, this isn't surprising, right? Like, this isn't surprising, which is why, like, even though they lost to KT, we're like, yes, we do know this. Like, T1 would lose like this. They lose like this quite often in a regular season. And then they played against Hanwha Life Esports, and had some holes in their early game, but still outclassed Hanwha Life Esports and played around the map incredibly well. Like T1's mid game and their Baron calls were incredibly strong against Hanwha Life Esports. And you're just watching it going, yeah, Pace isn't having his best day, but he's still like, at the moments that matter, clapping Gumayusi. And we're watching
He was
like,
pumping
okay,
damage on the Kaylin. Yeah.
and then you're watching like, okay, well, we fell behind, but we made every right decision, and Faker's making the right side lane pressure happen, and we fought our way back through, and we're smarter than this enemy team. Like that's kind of the T1 classic where you just blind Lee Sin Nar, and you're like, yeah, this is weird, and there were other better picks, and the casters are watching and be like, I don't get it, and then owner pops off, right, and they win the game, and you're like, well, I guess we'll let it slide. The same way that if Keiria's Anivia had won and dominated against a weaker team than KT, you would have been like, "Oh man, Keria, he's so innovative. Like he pulled
Yep.
out the Anivia." History didn't write that story for him this time around, but like T1 to me feels like they're still a very strong team. They still have draft issues. Nothing has changed since we last saw them against Dplus. They're in the no category, for better or for worse. I think for better, but like I could see them, losing to Gen.G in a stomp where Gen.G just completely crushes them and has better draft reads next week in that opening match on Wednesday that they have. But that like doesn't surprise me, right? Like this is a
No.
T1 that we know, so that's why
Yeah.
they're in the know.
Here's a couple more things we know about T1. Coma is not here, right? He is stepped away for personal reasons. So interim head coach Tom has taken over. So that level of structural stability is gone. And that maybe that led to, leaning into a little bit more draft creativity. The other one is we know that Faker will just go to the sign lane on Azir and do Faker things and punish you macro wise, which is literally what he did in that first game, second series against Hanwha Life Esports when Owner and Doran were struggling there on the top side of the map. After Pays and Keria like lost the early laning phase because Kanavi went and ganked early. And he was like the stability that you need. So we know what they can rely on when things go wrong. And he did that in that series. So I think that's why T1 is in that. They've earned that level of trust from us. And until the beating takes too much, then maybe it changes. However, it's fine. It's fine.
If T1 lose to DNS next week, then I'll be like, okay, maybe we don't know. But like right
Yeah.
now, I still think we for better or for worse know that this team is probably still a top 3 team in the LCK, even though we really got to work on the drafting. Come on, guys, what's going on with
Yeah.
some of these drafts?
My eyes are on the Krug Lord. Like I think that's the one where it's like, okay, if Doran has another stinky week, okay. Because we know his highs, we know how good he can be. He's done well for the squad. They've been able to absorb that. I feel like a lot of the issues with the bot lane aren't just Paze's fault. And when there's times for the boom boom damage, Paze has brought the boom boom damage. So for me, I think it's the Dorn and top lane thing because our final team that we know about is the team that led to those questions in my head about Doran. It was KT. Wolf, KT are 2-0, but although they are second because game score matters and Nongshim have a better game score, they beat the two favorites in the
They have the
LCK.
toughest. They have the toughest strength of schedule this week, and they won against both of them, and now have the easiest, arguably, remaining schedule for round 1. So they're in a
Yes.
really good spot. And their
And
draft
it wasn't just it wasn't just like that they won, it's how they did it, Wolf. Like they were the better team. They didn't just eke out wins. They were the better team. They were the proactive team with draft, with how they played it. All the parts were working. Effort coming in and creating the stability that they need. It was just it was so refreshing. It was so refreshing, and you have to trust it, in my opinion, in your opinion, because they did it against the two top squads. All right, sorry, Wolf. I
Yeah,
was getting too
I
excited.
wanted to talk. No, I wanted to talk about, and don't use that word, but I wanted to talk about like the Gen.G series specifically because we talked a little bit about the T1 one. Yeah, like Doran got solo killed. They had bad draft reads, but I think Gen.G played really well. Gen.G brought them to 3, right? And in the loss to Gen.G, Like Perfect tried his best to play into the Varus top, which was a really cool tech from Gen.G. Like Gen.G had a really cool draft read, a little bit of a fragile comp in game two, but because they had so much control of the lanes, it was really quite fine. Chovy was deathless on the Azir again, which is kind of becoming a bit of a trend. He is popping off on that pick. I think he's like the only Azir right now that you can really feel quite confident in, even though like we're still not 100% sure if Azir is that good. But Chovy makes it look still very relevant. And then like KT won a game into Ashe Seraphine because they got the karma, so they were able to call that out. BDD's Zoe pick was really quite cool, and the game wasn't even fully about him, but the pick actually worked really well for them into what Gen.G had. They won a game into like aiming was able to get 9 kills and pop off and do massive amounts of damage after laying into Caitlyn Elise, like with an Alistair support. Like Effort was able to pull that off. Like that's kind of a monumental achievement, especially considering Perfect had to scale into the Zahin pick in that game as well. Cuz did so much work. BDD obviously punished really hard on the Akali. But all of these pieces, like if I saw those two drafts between KT and Gen.G without knowing the result, in fact, when I was watching the game live, I was like, I think this is probably where the momentum ends because this comp just has too many ins for Gen.G. The weakness of the draft, obviously, is the Wukong early, but they have that really strong Caitlyn Elise lane. The Ambessa gets power over the Zahin early, and they're just going to snowball the game. They're going to steamroll their Gen.G. And KT they just were like, nah, they brick walled it. They were like, no, we're going to get through this. We're going to actually have some really good scraps. We're going to play through aiming well. We're going to have VDD get those executes and pop off. And Perfect's going to scale up on the Zahin, and it's going to be fine. And Jarvan's going to hold it all together. Like, that was just, for me, that was the game that really convinced me that KT is not a fluke here. And what we do know about KT also, the craziest thing is, after saying all of this, I'm sure somebody out there who's completely in the right to say this and completely in the right to raise their hand and be like, well, wait a second, like, isn't it KT? Don't they always just kind of get these bullshit wins and then, like, confuse everybody, and that's why the excitement meme exists? But if they bomb right after this, we still knew them, right? Like we knew that was possible. So, this is why, like, we both know that KT are legitimately good in week one, and may also otherwise be completely middle of the pack in the next 2 weeks. We'll find out. But I am ready to trust right now based on how they won the series against Gen.G. Their win over T1 was. It wasn't not impressive, but you know, T1's drafting left a lot to be desired there, and KT had some freebies. Against Gen.G, I feel like they really earned the win, which is why I'm ready to kind of trust that it's a great start for KT. And I will personally say that I think they had the best week one performance with the toughest strength of schedule. At the end of week one, in that microcosm, we have 8 weeks left to play. I think KT Rolster, I would say confidently, are the best LCK team today. We'll
Yeah,
see what happens in the future.
I think KT roll until week 4, where they play B&K Fear X, who might get it together. But the fact that they get those wins in back-to-back matches on the same week is the reason why we know it. Because KT versus Nongshim, you look at Nongshim's wins, and it's like, okay, they won 2 wins against fraudulent teams. So to me, it's like, okay, KT's favored there. KT versus Bro. I'm the Bro guy. I used my own eyes. I saw KT beat those better teams. I need to see a little bit more Loki being dominant against worse opponent, and they'll have the opportunity to do so against Kiwoom DRX later. But KT's favored. KT favored against Dplus. That might be where they slip up. That might be the slip up one. But we're not saying they're coming in as the underdog. We're saying that they might slip up, but we know that that is capable of them. So that's why they're in the no category. And for now, a pathway to 9-0 exists, and a pathway to like 2-7 also exists. Actually, maybe like 3-6, because I'll give them the Kiwoom DRX match whenever
Well,
they
no,
play.
the reverse. Remember when they went 0-4, then they turned it around? Maybe they go 4-0 and then turn it around.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So that is KT. It has been they have been the darling of the refreshing start. Again, the effort, like, I don't know, story of perseverance feels really good after a very tiny sample size here, Wolf. The effort, having played in the league now for half of the organizations in the LCK, and more importantly, played in challengers for 2 years, basically 2 years, because before
Also
he was over
great.
there, he he got benched from the Bros. Usually, if you get benched from the Bros, that's it. That is,
Yep.
thank you
You in
for your
Turkey.
service, great career, work on some, your European language of choice. But he persevered through, took that year off from Bro Challengers into KT Challengers, and then gets the opportunity over the last 3 months to come back on in and play. But 2 years off is a long time, man. Like, that's a long time before seeing the opportunity to be back at the top level, and then to have that first week go the way it does, it's just great, and he'll be able to
No one could
hang
have
his hat
predicted
on
it.
that for the rest of his career.
Yeah, nobody would have predicted that. And like, let's see what else he can do, because obviously this is still pretty early days in his development with this squad, and it already just looks so much better than with Ghost and Palu. So I think really a testament to him, but also a testament to the strength of this core here in KT Rolster that were, I think, held back by their supports in LCK Cup. And now that he's no longer holding them back and maybe can even empower them further, the core of KT looks really good. And Perfect is looking phenomenal as well. So those are our no's. Those are the ones I think that both of us unanimously agree we know.
Yeah. We'll get to some maybes in just a second here, but, you know what we also know? It's a great call to play with our friends over on Prize Picks. The playoff push is heating up and tournament hoops are here, and there's no better way to cash in on the high-flying hoops action than Prize Picks, America's #1 sports picks app. It was super easy to get started. I did it during football season with some more or lesses, and that transitioned into baseball and basketball season. You can too. Every bucket, every dime, every win means more when you're playing on Prize Picks. So don't pass up your next shot with Prize Picks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. Now, Prize Picks is the best way to get action in on esports in more than 50 states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Choose from several titles across esports, titles like Counter-Strike, League of Legends, Call of Duty, Valorant, and more. The app is really easy to use. To create a lineup, all you have to do is pick more or less on a few pro player stats and take your shot to win up to 1,000 times your money. And the action is heating up in major tournaments around the corner. Whether you're a fan of CS, League, or Call of Duty, now's the time to cash in on your favorite players with Prize Picks. So download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LCK to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LCK to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 in lineups. Thanks to our friends over at Prize Picks. All right, let's dive into it now. It's the maybes here for
I
Gen.G.
Yeah, so I want to talk about one team actually real quick in
Okay,
maybes first, because you and I think have different opinions. We put this in the maybe because it's not, you and I don't agree necessarily that we know or don't know. I would have put Hanwha Life Esports in no, and I'll tell you my opinion, and then you could say why you think they're a maybe.
that's
Because
fair.
I said last week before we started LCK that I was not buying Hanwha Life Esports stocks, and I made that statement ready to be wrong, but felt like I was pretty confident that I would be right. Now, everyone can have their take on this. Like, people will say maybe I'm wrong, maybe I didn't, that I didn't have the right read. I personally feel even more strongly that I'm not buying the stocks after watching them in week one, because not only did they beat Bro, but kind of almost messed up the win cons and looked really shaky despite being massively ahead on gold. And like, Kanavi made Pantheon late game look very weak and very like, I don't know, he was kind of going in by himself. They looked super disjointed. Teddy was literally finding Guma. Like, Guma is massively ahead. The whole team is ahead, and Guma's like, "I'll kill Teddy now," and Teddy's like, "What are you doing?" And just like, effectively metaphorically shoots him in the head, and Guma dies. Like, Guma tried to go for that play in the base as well, and Teddy was like, okay." It doesn't matter, because even though Guma dies and like it looked kind of funny, they still won because they were massively ahead. But they beat Bro 2-0, and then T1 lost to KT, right? So a lot of, especially on the KIA side, a lot of people were like, actually, I'm ready to say Han was gonna beat T1. And I was laughing at that, like that concept, because I was like, I did not feel that was a convincing win over Bro. And Kanavi got gapped by Gideon in the early game. Like, people
Yeah.
forget that that actually did happen. And we go into the series against T1, and Guma's having a stinker, and Kanavi is overextending, and they got leads. And
Yeah,
Guma,
wait,
like,
yeah.
he had the bottom 2v2, right? Like, I was asking Valdez, like, when was the last time you thought Hanwha had a lead? Because for me, it was when Guma got that kill in the bottom lane, and that was it. Since then, it's felt like they don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to team fight. They don't know how to play the map. What they know, or at least what they're doing, because Kanavi is the one who's leading the charge, is they're like, okay, we're going in. And
That is
Delight's
why they
like,
know.
guess I'll go in. And like Guma's like, guess I'll go in if I'm there. I might not be there, by the way. Because I might be too busy losing the 1v1 in the mid lane where I'm trying to farm. Guma's not looking great. Kanavi is looking great in the early game, except when he
Great in the early game.
lost it to the Gideon at that one time, because he also went a little bit too aggressive and then gave Gideon a pretty huge in. Zeus seems quite stable, like in a lot of ways. Like, I feel like Zeus is the most consistent part of this roster, but he even isn't looking his old self. And then Delight just looks bad because he's trying to play through Kanavi's insanity, which was not really what he's used to. And he's an engaged support player, is really good at engage, but he's usually kind of like, between the inner and inhibitor turret is like a bit far for me normally. I don't like, I like to say I go pretty deep, but that's I guess I'll do what Kanavi says here. And then Zeka is just Zeka, right? Like, we know Zeka is a really high potential player, likes to play a lot of melee carries, but he just isn't able to be like the glue that holds this team together the same way like BDD could hold a team together, because it's more measured. So it's like a really hard comparison to make. My take is that I don't think any of these 5 players individually are playing so badly that it's doomed. The same way we could say, like, career is the problem on Dplus. I think we can kind of, for Dplus, go, this is a big weight. We could have said the same thing about Peter, or sorry, not Peter, Palu or Ghost for KT. We're like, okay, this is a glaring problem. The same way we said for Kiwoom, like, yeah, there's questions about Giu / Lazy Field, but Rich is a clear issue that's holding this team back. I know a lot of people say Guma's the one. They'll be like, yeah, Guma's holding this team back. His individual performance has been so bad. He's had some really rough moments where you're like, God, Guma, like, get it together. I get it. But I don't think any individual player is the problem. Like I said last week, I think playstyles don't meld well here. I think this playstyle doesn't suit the LCK very well. So the LCK players that are playing with Kanavi are kind of a little bit lost and trying to figure out how to play with him. And it's not how Zeus has played for most of his career. Guma is not the type of player who's more dive focused. Look at his Kaisa play rate compared to other players, in terms of when we are playing dive, and we are going in, we are following crazy junglers like Kanavi. So, like, his Zeri, where you're supposed to slide in and press R, his Yunara, remember that Yunara game earlier on this year?
Yep.
So, it's not a great playstyle for Guma. So, he looks bad as a result. Delight is usually not that aggressive, even though he's a great engaged support. Zeus and Zeka are kind of like, I'm trying to figure out how to do this, but we normally kind of are side lane threats and are really big team fight threats when we're ahead. So it just doesn't mesh well. I said last week, I don't think it can be taught. I don't think it can be fixed. Guma's like the youngest person on this roster, basically. What do we do? Like, how do we solve this? I think Hanwha Life Esports are very likely to be a Rise Group team, because I think as they try to figure out how to fix it, sometimes they may even double and triple down on what they're trying to do to fix it, and either tell Kanavi he can't play like he's supposed to play, so he doesn't know how to play what they're telling him how to play, so he looks worse. Because Kanavi looks in a way like the most, I'm doing what I know on the team. Like, Kanavi is playing his style. The rest of the team is trying to keep up with Kanavi. They're trying to match his tempo. They're trying to do what he's doing, but they like haven't quite figured it out yet because they're not LPL players.
Yeah.
But if you tell Kanavi, like, well, there's 4 players here who don't play that way, so you have to stop doing that, and he's gonna be like, well, what the hell? This is my whole thing. You guys picked me. You invested in me. And now we basically don't have a jungler if Kanavi stops playing his style in some ways, right? So I'm kind of, for me, feeling like we know that the ceiling for Hanwha feels really low to me. I think the floor is high enough to be like they're going to be top 6. I don't think they're going to go to 7th to 10th. I don't think they're going to drop that low, but I don't think this team is a contender. Frankly, like I think personally I am confident to know right now that Hanwha Life Esports is not going to be a major threat. So that's my
Okay.
take on why I think they're not a maybe.
So the thing I agree with you is that Kanavi's playing the way that Kanavi's playing. It is also a fact that Gumayushi is the youngest player in this roster. You've hit some facts here, Wolf. But I think for me, you're underrating how solid Zeus has been, right? The 1v2 on Nivea kill was pretty nuts when his bot lane had already thrown away the lead. And we were watching the bot lane in our observer client and replays during that series. And Gumayushi is playing disrespectfully. Respectfully, he's playing disrespectfully. Um,
Fair.
the Kanavi is spending time in the bottom side of the map to get them an early lead, and thus kind of ruining his early pathing, opening himself up to get his jungle invaded, all that stuff, right? But you get the early lead, and in that first game against T1, they give the early gank down to Guma. Guma gets, they get the lead going. It's great. Pays KIA there behind, and then Guma just gets like Caitlyn comboed. He trap EQ. He's forced to flash. He's forced to barrier, and that gets him low under the tower. And then that led to the dive under the tower. He gets eviscerated. And that, to me, that is fixable, teachable because it's so early, right? We everyone focuses, and myself as well, the Kanavi diving deep past like 2 towers, and then Delight's like, am I coming? Like the team is all running with him. Like that stuff's funny, and that stuff is way later, and actually is more reminiscent of solo queue of a guy who really wants to win, is trying to make a play to win, and also kind of absolved of like fault, teachable fault, because it's way later after you gave up your advantage in the jungle to make your bot lane get the lead, and then they just through gameplay mess up the lead. So
Yeah,
to
I
me,
see what you're
earlier
saying.
moments are teachable, and earlier moments can be sat there, VOD reviewed, and it's like, all right, don't do that. If you don't throw that lead on a champion that you're known to play in the Jin with, a matchup that you can deal with, then we don't have like the ridiculousness of Kanavi and Delight when they're roaming by themselves, because Zeus is absorbing pressure 1v2. Like to me, that's where it starts. You have to
So
go
like
to the early part of the game, early game plans that worked. The early gank worked on the T1 bot lane. Like that's, just think about that, right?
I agree with
And
everything you said.
yeah, that to me is why I'm like, I still am holding off to see if they can push it on up, because the path that you've described is very possible. But the fixing your world champion 80 carry on the bottom side of the map, kind of being a little laissez-faire and not punishing right away and letting the bot lanes back on in disrespectfully, is that shouldn't happen. That shouldn't happen, and that's where my focus would be. Because yes, Kanavi's playing the LPL way. Yes, he's diving way deep. But if you're doing that and the rest of the team's there to follow with the lead that he helped you create, then they're snowballing the game out of the control. And
I
that's
think
what
that
I expect this team to be.
I think it's interesting because to say that like Guma was never played through on T1 is like a narrative I see, flying around from time to time. I think that's complete BS. Like I think they spent a ton of time in some of his best years in the LCK playing literally through bottom lane only, with Faker roaming bottom lane, ganking bottom lane only. They're playing double marksman comps. They're smashing the lane. Like that happens so often. The difference I think is that when Guma won lane and got massive leads, he still was just like, all right, cool. I'm just gonna follow Faker's macro calls and like I'll be a consistent, sustained damage dealer. Like his Varus, I think is so quintessential to Guma. Varus and Jin, two champions where you sit far away and the rest of the team is making the call and you do your job, right? You
Yep.
shoot the arrow in at the right timing. You're poking. Your job is simple. Are you clutch? Yeah, you could argue his arrow timings and some of his steals were clutch, right? They were super clutch. They were
Absolutely.
really important in those moments. could argue is Jin, similar story. Like his shots were incredibly accurate. He has like understands the map geometry. He knows like exactly when the flash is going to come out, so he could predict it and hit some of those crazy ult shots and deadly flourishes and stuff like that. Like you could
Map
make those arguments that
geometry.
he's super
Sorry.
clutch on those picks, right? But they're two picks where you're not sliding into the team fight and popping off. I'd say like the most clutch and like crazy aggro pick that Guma has in his wheelhouse is like his Neela, which is like surprisingly really good for some reason. But he otherwise is kind of like, I got a lead, I'm gonna do a lot of damage, but I'm gonna do it very safely and very far away. And he's like the antithesis of aiming in terms of like getting caught. Like he will not, in most cases, get caught in a team fight when he's set up for success on those types of picks. He will sit back, he'll be incredibly safe, hard to kill this guy, and that's like who he was on T1. So he would get a huge lead from Faker and Keria playing a range support to get him ahead, but he wouldn't play like Diablo,
Nope.
or play like Smash. He was just kind of like, I've got a lead, I'm gonna do a lot of things, and I'm gonna follow orders. I'm gonna show up to the team fight at the right timing. I'm gonna do the damage safely, and we're gonna win. Like oftentimes on T1 they won straight up because they had the better macro. And like they didn't need to clutch a team fight. They like mathematically won. They won the chess game before the fight even started. And Guma's like, well, I'm the bishop at the back, whatever you want to say. Like he's like, I'm gonna do my job. Like the chess game is won. I'm gonna go and kill the king now. But like on this roster, it seems like their read was like, we got to play through Guma, kind of like those old T1 times, get him ahead. But then they're expecting him to pop off and carry with the lead, the same way that like Pays is played through for T1, the same way that like Diablo's played through by Raptor for B&K, and it just isn't his playstyle. So he looks really uncomfortable and is making weird decisions, weird mistakes. There was that all in the bottom lane where he like probably would have killed Pays and then like got nervous and backed out because
Backed out. Yep.
it's just kind of like not really who he is, right? But he's trying to change it. So I think we can factually agree that Gumo was given a huge opportunity and bombed. Like I think that you and I both are on the same page on that one. I think it's a
Yep.
playstyle thing more than a
Execution.
than like Guma is just bad. I think it's like he's bad at what they're trying to have him do. Is like kind of my read on it. So I'm a little bit more forgiving for him because it's happening to everybody on this team. And that's why I said, to me, like not one individual player in my mind is bombing. If you had to pick one, I think you could say it's Guma, right? Like maybe he should be a little bit more flexible. He should be able to take these leads, like in fact, most other AD carries would in the LCK would be able to do. Like I think Teddy does it, in that situation. So like, he's not absolved of all blame, but I do think that like going back to my point, I don't know if he can fix it. Like, how do they fix it? How do they figure out how to make it so that he can just sit back and do the safe damage and be Guma? And I think the macro just doesn't back it up. Like their macro isn't as good as T1's. And Kanavi's macro is, there's a guy alive on my mini map. We better go get him.
there's a hook. There's a hook on in game 1 in the mid river bush. It was the beginning of the snowball. It was the mid river bush on the top side. Delight saw champion, hook champion. I think it was Keria as a Nico who was maybe cloned as maybe Caitlyn. I don't know. He turns, hooks him, and then Kanavi jumps right on in. And that was without any vision, and there were 4 T1 players there, and then Delight just walks on out, and Kanavi dies. It was just like, it was so funny. See champ, hook champ, we go in, oh shit, sorry bud. And then the very next play was the Kanavi diving past the tower into the tier 2 tower with both towers up the team. Like, it just happened so fast. It happened so fast to try and like stop the snowball. And that to me, again, is funny. It is something that you could talk about, but the problem is when you go back to the laning phase of Guma, you can't. It's just Guma. You can't do that. You can't step on a trap there. You can't do that, right? To me, that is an easy fix. That is an easy fix because he's been that guy that doesn't do that.
It's not a playstyle thing, like
yeah, that's not. Thank you. That's not the playstyle thing.
Yeah, that's not a playstyle thing.
Okay, so that was Hanwha, and I'm super glad that you brought that up. I like the idea of like you feel like you know him, I feel like I'm giving him more grace, but I know where the problem is to start in the early game. All right, now let's move. So we've got 3 other teams in the maybe column. So we've got Nongshim in the maybe column, the DN Automotive Supers in the maybe column and Gen.G in the maybe column. So let's go with Nongshim because they're 2-0, man. They're 2-0. It feels like a meta where Lehenz's creativity and flexibility can be appreciated. And more importantly to me is that Scout had himself an okay week. He didn't play Azir very well. When you brought up the Azirs, I was like, who else played Azir? Loki played Azir. That wasn't great. Yukao played Azir. That wasn't great. Scout played Azir. He had some nice shoves, but he was like 0-3 in a win. But that to me is like kind of what I liked about Scout's Azir game. It was, hey, I'm not the guy in this game. It's not about me. I just need to make sure that I support my team to get the victory, despite kind of, not putting out the boom boom damage. Let's see. I think that was the game against it was against DNS and Closer, who had the LeBlanc. So it wasn't even like an easy, like this easiest matchup, right? So like Scout 0-3 and 7, but it's like, okay, this game is about Taeyun. It's about it's about Taeyun and getting to the later part, the Elder Dragon flip, which they did. They caught Dudu and then they won the game. It's about winning, and they were able to do that.
That's the goofy thing about Nongshim, which is why I think they're kind of on the maybe column, is that draft was punished pretty hard. Like the LeBlanc came through, like they had the winning lanes, and when I was casting with Atlas, I was like joking like about the cup is half full for Nongshim. Like maybe they could do it. Like maybe they could come back. Come on, Atlas, it's not 100% over, and it wasn't. Actually, but by all rights, like a team that isn't DNS, who's also on our list of maybes, probably just wins the game from there. And Nongshim are able to get the punishes, right? But I think it's very true that Taeyun and Lehenz are looking much better. I think it's very true that Scout is looking a lot more comfortable. Looks like he's had some time to remember how to speak Korean with the squad and like actually play around team fighting properly. That is a joke, but I mean, like, you know what I mean? He's been gone for a while. The styles are different. He's adjusting better than Kanavi, so give him that. I think that I still have doubts about all three of the players, though. Like, Lehenz looked really good this week. Will he look good next week? Will Taeyun continue to perform? Or will he start running it down in 2v2s against tougher opposition, get into his own head? Scout, similar story. Like, he played against ShowMaker and Closer, which at certain times could be players that give you a hard time. In fact, in that LeBlanc game, gave him a hard time on the Azir you mentioned. So I struggle to say that like Scout is peak EDG form today. You know, I don't think we could say that he's anywhere close to that, but he was looking a lot more worse for wear back in Kespa Cup and LCK Cup. So it's kind of like, I feel Nongshim are, by the way, hilariously first place after week 1 because of their game score. But like, I think they're trending in the right direction. I think it's very safe to say. But I think it's also safe to say that it was not a perfect week outside of their game score, which was like, it was not a week where I'm like, oh, there's no notes here. Good job, Nongshim. Solid. There are still issues.
There are still notes.
There are still notes, and there are still issues that like we are like, okay, it's a less of an issue now, but it's still an issue. Scout, for example, Lehenz, for example. So Kingen and Sponge look solid, but that was also the case when they were losing, and where Kingen was just like, I give up. I'm not even going to that team fight.
You're almost there. You're almost there to my point, Wolf, which is we have like these teams in the middle of the pack that aren't T1, like, historically, that aren't T1, Gen.G, Hanwha, KT, right? Which is teams that know how to win, right? Like, they won games that they didn't necessarily have business needing to win and found a way to win. And then in the second game against the DNS, they found the win to close it out. They found the way to close it out. Either you find the comeback angle or you know how to close it out, right? Because if you look on the opposite side, in also our don't know, in that series, in the DN Automotive Supers, Pyoshik was running the shit out of the game. He was all over the place. They gave him Pantheon. He was up on the top side of the map, made the gank. Down on the bottom side of the map, made the gank. Ganking in the mid lane, making sure Scout can't play the game. And then they didn't know how to win. Like, they just didn't know how to close it on out. It's, dude, you cannot get caught here. due to, yes, you got the kill on King and early on, or we got the kill on King and early on, but we skipped the steps to clear the vision behind us. They could TP. Like, it's just those moments are what turns a team from maybes to knowers, or don't knowers to maybes. And in this case, I am just hesitant on Nongshim because their opponents were worse. And as you said, stronger teams will punish these deficits that they've had. And I trust their wins where they were in the lead and then they closed the game out, like game 2 against the Supers. But in game 1 of the Supers, they should lose. And so that's why they're in the maybe column for me. But the best part about this is that they are winning games and finding ways to win. Like, that is a skill to how do we close out a game or how do we come back in this game? That is a skill. And I love that for them. And if
Yeah.
they can prove it next week, that then bumps them up. But that was a thing that was missing from them. And I feel like got taken away because they were in the legend group and they were just getting absolutely shit on for the last half of the year. Like, they looked like a shell of themselves. And then coming into the season, as you said, they were figuring, they just were figuring out how the team worked because they have new pieces there in Taeyun and Scout and
You took the
Sponge.
words out of my mouth basically when you said like they're finding the ways to win, because it's like it could be both true that it's incredibly bad the game state they found themselves in, but it's also really good that they were able to find their way out of it, right? Like both can be true, that like they shouldn't have been in that spot, but a lot of other teams wouldn't have been able to figure out how to get out of that spot. So like, you know, that goes back to the maybe, right? So Nongshim I have high hopes for. I think this team, you know, my week 1 vibe is that this team at the moment I think might slip into Legend Group. I think probably going to end up being at the edge of Legend just like they were last year if the form could be maintained, and like some weaknesses could be kind of chipped away at, like scouts, question marks in the laning phase, same with the hens.
Yeah, next week, KT and Kiwoom. So either they're going to be super legit and beat KT, and KT also in the know, and we'll have 4 no's, or they will. I don't know if they go 1-1, are they still in the maybe, or do they? If they go 1-1, do they go into the no category? And it's like, all right, they'll beat teams that are better than them and lose teams worse than them. Like, is that how do you see them?
I think it just depends on the games, right? But I kind of feel like they go into the nose if they lose, if KT's 2-0 stomps them, but then they like have like a relatively strong series against Kiwoom, and beat their former bottom laner in Ju, and you're like, yeah, I mean, it was a 2-0, but we were a little bit, there were some moments where Nongshim could have lost there. Then I'm like, okay, we know now. It's the same
Yeah,
thing that happened against DNS, where it's like, oh yeah, you kind of got across the line, but it should have been easier, so you probably won't beat teams like KT or Gen.G, potentially Hanwha, you know. Hard to say. You know, Hanwha's really middle of the pack right now. I think when we talk about Hanwha, we're like, we're very critical and very negative. It's just because of the caliber of players that are on that team. Like, you know, 5th place is not the worst ever, but it's for Hanwha, it's like actually feels like a death sentence if you actually end up like falling to Rise Group. So
yeah.
I guess we
The
can
flip
talk
coin
about
of that.
DNS now, right? Like
Yeah, like we have to, right? It's just because they are proving why Nongshim are here, and also proving why they are here because you know they beat probably the weakest team in the league in Kiwoom DRX, and then the fashion. It's the fashion of how they lost here, Wolf. It's they stacked the Drakes. They pushed the early game. They had a bit of a whoopsie. They're in the top jungle where the Pantheon gets caught, and then Closer tries to go in because he's the Fed LeBlanc, and then he gets caught, and they're like, okay, let's stop the bleeding and just stack the Drakes. That I liked. So I like both. They get the lead. It's okay that they make a mistake because that shit happens. And then they stop the bleeding. They do what you're supposed to do and get the soul. And then they just fuck up the Elder fight. It's like, what are we
all right,
doing?
I'm gonna
What
say
are we
something.
doing?
I'm gonna say something really crazy and controversial, but I think it's kind of starting to feel true to me
Okay.
that Pioshik is actually the most consistent part of this roster.
Oh,
Like
that's
he's,
fucking.
but like this week, it's been like Pioshik is carrying this team across the line. And yes, there was some overextensions that they messed up the game against Nongshim, that game 1 lead that they had. And yes, Closer popped off there, and Closer's been pretty all right, but like Pioshik is the guy. Like Pioshik is like guess I'll show up and do my best, and the rest of you guys can either follow me or not. I'm not saying that in like a Kanavi way where they have to follow his crazy aggression. He's just really good. Like he's been very strong. He was applying good pressure. He's got early pathing that's really strong. And I kind of feel like if Pyosik was on a top team right now, we'd be like saying like this guy's performances are pretty legendary. But unfortunately, like closer's still closer, right? Like he's got his champion pool issues. He's very explosive, but like that can backfire. Dudu is like I don't even.
What happened to your doo-doo, man? What
No,
happened?
it's gone. It's for me. It's gone. For me, it really wasn't. I never trusted Year of Dudu personally. You guys probably noticed I didn't mention it as much as the other casters, except like in jest. Like I don't really think like when Dudu was a top 3 player in the LCK a few years back. What like 2023? That was when we were like, okay, wait a minute, like this guy's pretty legit. And that was actually real, but I think he's unfortunately still in the plastic bag that he's in the opening. I don't know what the concept for DNS was like with the plastic bag thing in the opening video. By the way, like the opening video has some good moments, some weird moments. I don't know, but like I get it. DNF was like basically suffocating, right? So like maybe they're getting out of the bag so they can breathe again. Is the concept?
You know what?
But
I like this. I like this. We're maybe on the LCK opening video. You know, we know like there's the pendulum thing, but it's not it's like the tool, right? The T1 tool thing. It's like above, it's like clockwork, or I guess. And then, of course, we got to talk about the famed the knuckle touch. The knuckle touch, man.
the
The
knuckle touch.
knuckle touch.
Well, the
Oh,
knuckle touch into
God.
like the explosion, right? Like the explosion.
Yeah.
It's like it's a bit much, but I get what they were going for because it's kind of supposed to be.
I
like
don't. What are we going for?
I don't know. I kind of feel like it's supposed to be like a more direct visual physical moment of like the nod, like the nod of like acknowledgement of like yeah, like you and I, we know each other, we worked together before, like but like I don't know if that would have done well, so they like tried to make it into like fist bump is a little bit too real because Riot fist bump and like it's like just not the vibe, so they tried to make it into something else. I don't know. I kind of see what they were going for there. It just came across really weird, and like if it were up to me as an editor, I would have been like, yeah, we're not going to use that. We'll change the song and use some music a little bit more directly instead or something.
No.
Anyway,
Dude.
back to DNS. Like, Dudu is like trying to get out of the bag in the opening. Okay, he's trying to escape. He's trying to breathe, and I don't know. He's practically still in the bag for me. His potential is still sealed, right? Vacuum sealed in there, and I just think that this team has an incredible jungler and a mid laner who is on certain picks incredible as well. Like I really do think Closer is looking in the last year best individual year, but like he is legit now. Like I think Closer is no longer just like funny Akali sometimes maybe get a win. Like he's actually like a legit mid laner, even though he still has champions he prefers more than others. I still think he's basically budget Zeka, but that's saying a good thing, right?
Yeah.
Because Zeka is obviously really good at those similar types of champions. There's just kind of a ceiling to this comp for me, or to this team for me. And Ducker's got problems, man. Ducker's not playing well. Ducker's not playing well, and Duckers was playing well at the end of the year last year. I said he was elite, and now we're back to like, is Poduk available? You know, where it's the same sort of start. What's going on?
We got the wrong duck. And that to me is why they're in the maybe, because I feel like you've got yes, exactly. Like but you trust good form. You trust good form Pyosik. You trust the caliber of player Closer can be. But then you have a don't trust in Dudu, and then like how temporary is the form of this bot lane? So like you have like 2 trusts, 1 don't, and 2 maybes. That leads to a maybe to me in DNS.
Yeah,
and then lastly, in their win, it was against the worst team in the league. So now you're like, oh, I don't even trust the win that we had. So I don't know what to make of them yet. And they play a T1 where we kind of know, and then a B&K FureX that we haven't mentioned yet because we don't know. That's a spoiler. But Wolf, you made me open the video, and I went back and I looked at a couple of these other concepts now of the teams. Like, there was the sand there for B&K. And there are stairs. They're sitting on the stairs that were going up and sand. Hanjin Brion. You know what Hanjin Brion's was? And I'll just be cynical about it because I love my bros, but also it's for real, like, depressing. They just have a bunch of people walking, and
And
it's just like,
Teddy's there.
whoa, it's like people walking around. It's because Hanjin is the delivery company,
Yeah.
logistics company, what this branch of it. And more importantly, there's not a single returning player on this roster. So they're just like, I got a bunch of guys here, and these guys got jackets. You stop. You're now pros on this team.
Well, it's like
And
Teddy is
that's
kind of at the
those are the
center of it
pros.
as well, where it's like kind of like nothing really matters. It's just Teddy's on the team, and you got the other four guys on the Rift.
Oh no, you
Also,
got five. They put all five there. There's Bromer.
true.
Bromer's there,
Yeah,
and then
Romer
Loki's
is
like in
there.
the corner. All right, sorry. I just
So you
needed
got
to
like
end there.
you
Yeah.
got Chovy looks at the tiger, which was a cool shot, but it was a little bit weird for me. Not sure. Does it mean like he's a tiger because he's like looking at his reflection of himself? There have been like so many weird moments in LCK openings with Chovy that haven't really been fully explained. Like I think it was 2022 spring maybe, where he like looks at like a demon, and like some people are like, oh, it's like the shadow of Faker, like he has to face him, like but like it's just not really like it's not clear what it means. Here again, it's a really cool shot, but again somewhat unclear. Maybe it's again trying to like showcase that Chovy is still facing his demons, failed at first stand, like hasn't won worlds yet. I'm not sure, but maybe it's introspective, supposed to be.
Yeah.
And then like the T1 thing is very, at first, I was like, okay, so Doran is kind of like, they're trying to say he's like a chess player because he's got all these like things around him that are very, I don't even want to say science based, but kind of like measurement based, almost like with the hourglass that's like on the table. But then it's just all of T1 just have like a bunch of tools for some reason, and then Faker has the item that is also somewhat. It's like a Kanik Rookern where you're like, it's not a real thing, but it looks cool.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if it's a functional device of any kind. And then the one other concept that I thought was pretty cool, if I'm not mistaken, I've only seen the opening a few times, right? And like I'm
Yeah.
often like watching a bunch of stuff or writing notes or whatever when the opening's playing. I'll break it down more like as the season goes on, but I think BDD is on an hourglass and like or like a sundial basically, I mean to say.
Sundial.
And
Yeah.
like the sundial is kind of spinning, and it almost implies that like no matter who's on this team, no matter what's happening, like
Yeah.
BDD is the
Yeah.
constant, which is really cool. Because they had like the stairs where everyone was climbing up to BDD last season,
Yep.
and they used BDD in a really cool, creative way. So there was some hits and misses in the opening, but this is a bit of a digression from our maybe talk. But I don't know why, but doo-doo in the bag is the part of the opening where I'm just still like I think I almost get it, but I don't know, and like everyone else got like these cool props. Like Rich has a Porsche, man. Like why is doo-doo like in a bag? What does it mean? Yeah, but it
I,
makes me think about his performance because it maybe like LCK just knew all along. Like I don't know, he's in the bag and we don't understand.
yeah. I love that. I sorry, I didn't mean to derail too hard, but you just we needed to touch. We needed to talk about the knuckle touch, the rich Porsche, the sundial, the artistry, the Kanik Rookern. All right. Finally in our maybes, which is kind of nuts because this was, there was a post on Reddit earlier being like, this is the highest win rate team in the history of League of Legends since I think it's Keen, Canyon, and Chovy have been together. This Gen.G roster. And it's a maybe because of their on the Rift play, but also some of the things off the Rift. So let's start with on the Rift for Gen.G. They drop 2-1 to KT, and then they take care of business here against B&K FureX, and in their second series, and in their second game, it wasn't clean. B&K FureX went out kicking and screaming and had a couple of true scares for Gen.G fans, but ultimately they get the 1-1. And I here's what I want from you, Wolf, on this take.
Okay.
It's why is this not overreacting? Why are we not overreacting? They lost a series. Why are we not overreacting
So
by putting them in the maybe?
I think we don't know because yes, they lost to KT, but they lost in, like I mentioned, for KT's winning as why it's a good thing and why we know KT are on form. the way they lost it to KT was also kind of like Gen.G played legit. Like it wasn't like they just kind of had a off day. It wasn't like the draft reads were so bad like they were against G2 where you're like, oh man, like Gen.G, well, your read is so wrong. Where it becomes simple, but you're like, this is bad for Gen.G. At the same time, against BNK, like they looked a little bit puzzling the way they played. Like Canyon had both some great moments on the Skarner, and like people were like Ox were like saying like if you don't vote for Canyon, you're kind of like you've lost your mind. But then also he's like kind of running in and doing nothing in some of those fights and like keeping BNK relevant. So it was really quite difficult to quantify there the BNK series after BNK got beaten by Bro. So we're like everything is spinning here. The thing for me is I know that Gen.G is a Legend Group team. Like we know the class is still there, and we know that this team has like the caliber of this roster and how good Keen is, like how much Keen will just get it done no matter what. We know this team was probably just going to be like maybe even our best team. The reason why they're a don't know though for me is because the same sort of dominance, macro play, early game lead snowballs, like the Gen.G that gets like one kill in the early game and then looks at a 4,000 gold lead at 12 minutes. You're like, wait,
Yeah.
I don't see that Gen.G, which for me makes it feel like I don't know them, right? Like I know that they have the ability to win. I know they will win. I know they actually probably will win like both of their matches next week. But how they're playing, how they're winning, their form is not. It doesn't feel as dominant. It doesn't feel like the same team I had earlier this year, giving that insane win rate, dropping those series in LCK Cup. Right, like this is a team that until very recently felt untouchable, and they feel very touchable. Like they don't feel like they feel like gods that can bleed, right? They feel like gods that can bleed, and that means they're still gods. But like the fact that I saw a little blood makes me feel like I don't know them, which is why for me, like I put them in the don't know in terms of the gameplay, and that comes down to some inconsistencies with Canyon, right? Some drafts that were high risk but very drafts that I think you could trust Gen.G to play. Chovy's Azir, for example, I think he's the best Azir in the LCK right now, but even still, like struggle to have an impact sometimes until we got the super late game against BNK and just did like 2 sand soldiers doing damage, and then it's like, okay, all their health bars are gone now. Because he scaled up. Sidling was fine.
Yeah.
I just don't think that I know what their ceiling is right now, but I also don't know if I know what their floor is either. Like they won against BNK pretty decisively, even though BNK made it interesting, right? They played a really good series against KT, just got outclassed in the end. And there weren't major issues there that I could go, oh man, like it's not the same issues we could talk about with T1 or with Hanwha, where it feels a little bit more defined what we know the issues are. It just seems like if you're trying to solve why Gen.G looks less good than they did at LCK Cup, I feel like you're kind of guessing right now. You know what I mean? That's why I kind of put them in the don't know. It's like, is Ruler playing bad? Is Chovy playing bad? Is like Keen off? It's like, no. Is Canyon making some weird mistakes sometimes? Yes, but like he was also doing that when they were extremely dominant in LCK Cup and in the playoffs as well. Like we were like, okay, like Canyon is definitely very consistent overall, but there are still some weird moments there. But like that's just kind of always the case because of his playstyle and how confident he is. So I just don't know how to figure out how to tell you guys that I think you shouldn't worry and they'll probably still win the LCK. But that's what I want to tell you guys. I just don't know how we get there, like, and what will happen along the way.
So
Because I don't think this
the
team necessarily goes like undefeated because they're already not, right? I don't think they have like a 10 win streak though. Like let's say, like
bold
I don't think
Wolf,
they.
very bold of you.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like I don't think they have the kind of run where everyone is telling the whole world like this team is untouchable. And obviously
Yeah.
they lost literally to G2, which was a shock to everyone because they got 3-0'd, but it's hard now to make the narrative that Gen.G is the best team in the world, even though you haven't like seen them at an international yet. Like before, everyone was like universally agreeing this was the case, and now it's kind of like, okay, still very good and maybe the best, but the vibe has changed.
Yeah. There are in our maybes categories, we have a lot of things where we know what we don't know. With Gen.G, I feel like they're here because we don't know what we don't know. And that is the maybe to me. It's we know something is off. We know that they've lost. We can kind of try and trace it back, but will that happen again? Whereas, with DNS, it's okay, are we going to get Dukdom back to form? With Hanwha Life, it's are we going to get the problem is Gumayushi's early game that is don't step on that trap. Okay. And then how will that affect the rest of Kanavi and the rest of the game plan? I don't know. That's an I don't know. I know. But with Gen.G, they've always been able to pull these games off. And when I went back and watched that game one of the KT Rolster against KT, it was such an early, like that was a fast game one. Like that game snowball, like the ending snowballed, right? They were behind. And then I remember, I think Canyon just died. They just died. And then Chovy just jumped right into the enemy team, died. And then KT ran up the base and then ended it in 25 minutes or something like that. And I was like, ooh, that was uncharacteristic, not very like what B&K did to Gen.G later on, where they're like, okay, we're going to drag this game out. We're going to just, fortify into the base. We're going to make him earn it. Chovy is like, nah, let's go to game two. Or ulted into all of them after his team was already gone and dead. And so that to me was the concerning thing. That's the concern, where I think Gen.G had won so much, maybe we forgot that there were games where they had to eke out wins, find ways to win against some teams to keep that undefeated streak alive. They weren't all just dominant, punish you into the ground, you don't get to play the game. They had a lot of those, but there were also many games where they eked it out and kept the winning streak alive. So
Yeah, I mean, like,
for
ultimately. Oh, sorry, I didn't
yeah,
mean
go
to.
on.
I thought I just want to say, ultimately, like, I spent this whole time talking about this maybe team as if it was a don't know team, basically. Like, I maybe I've changed my mind. Maybe I really just think like I don't know, because I was like, well, there's all these maybes and they're still really good, and we know they're probably gonna win, so like it's a maybe. But even if they win, I feel like we right now can't know why. Like it's such an enigma. But it's like not bad. Like they're still really good. They're just like maybe like it might even be that the rest of the LCK is just better than they were at LCK Cup, and KT improved and B&K look, a little bit more legit, and maybe there's something to be said about that. Like it's not necessarily that Gen.G just got like massively worse, but maybe they haven't continued to improve at the same rate. Maybe there's the hangover from first stand. It's really fun to discuss, which is a
Yes.
little bit more than what we can say about what we'll have to discuss about them next.
Yes. Which we will do after we remind you about some of our friends. So yeah, Gen.G in our maybe and maybe wolves don't know. Before we get to that, it's time to remind you about our friends over at Raycon. This message is sponsored by Raycon. Now, with Mother's Day coming up, it's a great time to find a gift that actually fits into your mom's everyday life. Whether she's going for a walk, running errands, commuting, or taking a quick phone call, Raycon's everyday earbuds classics are a great option. They've become a go-to for everyday listening. When the active noise cancellation, they block out background noise so she can stay focused on what she's listening to, whether that's music, a podcast, or a call. Everything sounds clear and immersive, which makes it easier to stay present and enjoy those small moments throughout the day. It's a thoughtful Mother's Day gift that fits easily into a routine and honestly is also a great pickup if you want to pair it yourself as well. And right now, you can grab them for 15% off. Raycon's Everyday Earbuds Classic is packed with upgrades. They've got active noise cancellation, multi-point connectivity so you can pair two devices at once, and a super comfortable ergonomic design that stays put no matter what you're doing. And the new colors are awesome. I've already talked about it. I've got myself the rose gold. My parents had just came to visit. My mom did forget her earbuds one time, and I connected the Raycons to her phone, and she loved it. And one of the best parts about Raycon is that they deliver the same premium audio quality as the big brands, but at half the price. Add in over 3 million happy customers and a 30-day happiness guarantee, and there's zero reason to overpay. Wolf also has the Raycons. We talk
Yeah,
about it all the time on the show.
I use them all the time. It like again, like it's I always go back to it, but the case is super durable. The charge lasts really well for me, like better than they even say. Like the earbuds like are always charged. I can always pull them out, no matter what, and that's why they're always with me. Because like when you got it, for me, it's often I need to use them because baby's sleeping, or I'm in a, public transportation, or I'm in a, waiting at the doctor's office. There's some scenario where I need to watch a VOD, or I need to watch a video, I need to watch some Last Free Nation content, whatever the case may be, and I can't put the audio out, put those earbuds in. They're also the earbuds in my life, I swear, that fall out of my ear like never, like compared to almost every other earbud in my life that always falls out. So I cannot recommend more.
So now's the time. Think about it. Do I need one? If answer yes, head on over to buyraycon.com/LCK to get 15% off the Everyday Earbuds Classic. Celebrate moms in your life. Get it for her as well. Go to buyraycon.com/LCK to get 15% off the Everyday Earbuds Classic. That's LCK at the end of buyraycon.com to get 15% off of the Everyday Earbuds Classic. Thanks to our friends over at Raycon for sponsoring. All right. Well, we talked about the on Rift issues with Gen.G. Here are the off Rift ones. It was a pretty big one here, Wolf, including the bot lane world champion LPL returning a couple years ago, Ruler. Ruler had a legal issue with tax fraud that happened in the past. The appeals process went through and concluded just right before the LCK season started, and it created a lot of buzz here, Wolf. And so
Yeah.
Wolf has a little bit more of the timeline on what
So
happened, and then we can contextualize why it's a bigger deal or what it could mean here in the LCK and in Korea.
So I guess before I jump into all of this, because I know there's a lot to get through, and I'm going to try to keep it simple. I know this is, since the news has kind of broken and come out a little bit late for us to be covering this now, but it's still relevant. The first thing I want to say is it doesn't seem like it's affected his gameplay very much. So we're again talking about this as a off game sort of issue. The second thing I want to say is that even though the sources I have for this information are all public and are from sources like Jungang Daily, which is a reputable newspaper here, you could decide what you want in terms of like their political bias or whatever. I know there's a lot of different takes on that. Asia Business is involved in some of these sources. A lot of sources I've gotten from like Down News, and which are sourced from other big news sites out here in Korea. There's a lot of like tabloids and stuff that have been reporting on this, but like the information I have and the timeline I'm going to tell you guys is based on public information that's been widely reported by legitimate sources, right? So like this is not me like knowing some secret or talking to people behind the scenes at LCK. This is not me having a chat with Arnold and be like, well, he told me what really was going on. Like, this is what we know. This is what everybody knows in terms of the facts that I'm about to say
Yep.
in this case. So this is not speculation. So the timeline here, and I want to cover this completely on this show before we talk about anything about it, because it's just important, because there's been a lot of misinformation on Twitter. A lot of people have been asking me about my take about this, and I said I'm going to wait till Let's Cover Korea to talk about it. So I'm doing that now. So between 2018 and 2021 is when Ruler paid his father as a manager and said that those were costs as business expenses. And so Ruler was sending money to his father, and his father was basically investing this money through, investment accounts, stock transactions, stuff like that happened under his father's name. And this is after, in 2018, which is the year after Ruler won the world championship in 2017, Ruler's father is claimed to have quit his job basically and become his manager. So like the timeline is Ruler's father becomes manager in 2018. The period between 2018 and 2021 is when a lot of these investments were being made by Ruler's father through money that Ruler gave to him. Now in 2023, the National Tax Service, which is the Korean IRS effectively, did an investigation and reassessed Ruler's taxes, because this happens from time to time when you have a high income like Ruler has. The National Tax Service will look back and look at some of your history, and they were like, okay, 2018 to 2021, there were some overseas incomes that were kind of missing, and some of the stuff didn't line up, and so they were able to, in their mind, identify like that a lot of money was going to Ruler's father, and this wasn't being taxed correctly. So they said, like, you owe more tax is the TLDR. You gave a lot of this stuff to your father, but that doesn't mean that you don't have to pay taxes on this. And so they said you owe more money. And then Ruler in 2013 or 2023, sorry, there's a lot of years going through here. in 2023, that same year in August, filed an appeal. So he challenged the National Tax Service and said, actually, I don't think I owe more money. I think everything I've done here is legitimate. It was the claim that he made in that appeal. It took a few months, and in 2024, the Tax Tribunal, which is basically the part of the National Tax Service that deals with these types of issues, essentially a court, rejected his appeal, right? So they said, you have to pay. And so Ruler did say publicly that he paid. So there hasn't necessarily been proof that he paid, but he says that he paid. And what seems to be reported by most, news outlets is that he paid his taxes after this happened, and that there were no like additional penalties. Can't know that for sure, but again, based on reports, it seems he lost the appeal and then paid. And that was the end of this issue between the National Tax Service and Ruler. But then later, some of those tribunal documents, like the court documents about this appeal, became public very recently on March 26th, right? And it seems unknown, unless I've missed something here, how those documents became public. They were anonymous at the time. Like, it wasn't 100% sure who this was about. And then people started to figure out, like, okay, this is Ruler. And we now know this is true, right? Because Ruler has admitted this. And then on March 31st was when, like, media started reporting about this. And, like, this, like, the media had looked into it for a few days, found their own sources, went into this, right? And were able to basically identify, like, yes, this was the case. Ruler gave money to his father. And this is around the time that Korean fans really started to believe, like, hey, this guy committed tax fraud. He tried to avoid paying taxes. And this is when it was already kind of becoming an issue, like, in the early part of that March 26 week. But when it hit 31, when all the news articles came out about it, it felt like, okay, everyone's saying this is legit. Like, Yonhap News is reporting about this, right? Like, every major, like, standard, like, these are the news articles or news, things out here in Korea that are basically the equivalent of, like, Reuters, which are widely believed to be true, right? Like, considered to be pretty strong reporting. And so, like, that's when the Korean fan sentiment, like, went to, like, the peak, right? It was like, oh god, like, this is actually real. It's not even just a rumor. It's not even just a leak. Like, this is, like, everyone's saying it's true, so it must be true. And then on April Fool's Day, on the opening day of LCK, the LCK said that they were going to, do their own review. And this involved three things, right? It said that they were aware that there was an issue and they're already conducting internal review. So they said, basically saying the review was already happening, not this, that they're starting it right now with this announcement. They also said that they were going to form a committee that includes outside experts, so not just doing it completely internally in terms of reviewing what things are happening, so it could be more objective and not just LCK is like doing whatever they want, and there's no sort of real experts involved in this. And then the last thing they said, which everybody knows, is that no measures are being implemented right now, aka Ruler is playing this week, and we're still in the middle of the investigation. So they also mentioned their rules, which are 9.2.8, which is the criminal conduct rule, which is the best translation for this because the rulebook's in Korean, which means that LCK participants can't engage in conduct that's prohibited by the Korean law, including cases where tax authorities are investigating, or the Punishment of Tax Evaders Act, which is the English translation of the Tax Evasion Act that's mentioned in this rulebook. And then also in 10.1 that allows the LCK to penalize players for violations of the rulebook or violations of Korean law that are unrelated to the LCK. You don't have to break the law in GGG Law Park for them to use this against you. And then it means that, like, they can either 10.2 means they can warn you, they can give you demerit points, like our bathroom pause stuff that we were talking about. They can fine you and suspend you. And in the penalty index for criminal conduct, it goes up to 100 million won fine. That's the maximum they could do in terms of fine, or a permanent ban of playing in LCK, CL, and then potentially even international events is like what LCK could do if they wanted to. And they mentioned those rules, as far as I know, in their statement. And that's like really the last thing that happened in terms of everything that happened before Ruler posted. And he posted the next day that he never intentionally concealed his income. He had he had two asset management problems, basically, is what he said, and that the NTS, National Tax Service, didn't recognize the labor cost, and so he paid basically because they rejected his appeal. And he also claims that he returned all the shares that his father owned back to his own name. And so that was the real like final update basically here. And so now what happens is the National Tax Service is not after Ruler. I've seen a lot of like weird tweets and claims that like basically Ruler's on the run, like, you know, he hasn't paid, like he might go to jail. Like none of this is actually accurate. The truth is there's a lot of negative fan sentiment about this because they are claiming that he's essentially like disparaging the LCK. He has attempted a crime, is what a lot of people would say, even though like he was not charged with a crime and paid what he owed. And so there's a lot of Korean fans that are very upset with the situation. So LCK is now conducting their own investigation, and they have allowed Ruler to play both of his opening matches this week. They went 1-1. We talked about them already as a potential maybe or a don't know in our little sphere here. What happens next is what's really tricky, and it's really hard for the LCK because if they just let's say suspend Ruler from play, it really hurts Gen.G competitively in this tournament. Like there's not a great replacement for him, et cetera, et cetera. It is a bad look to basically openly admit that you one of your most star players is in your mind like has done misconduct or committed a crime, like whatever ruling or reasoning they use to say like we're suspending him for X reason. It's a bad look for the LCK, right? Obviously. The other problem is if they let him keep playing and the fans get more and more upset and they don't necessarily make any sort of punishment, then people will think that the LCK is just okay with this, which is not necessarily true, right? Like, but the LCK might rule, okay, look, he did something that the National Tax Service said was incorrect and made him pay more money. And you could think about that in a lot of different ways. LCK might, you know, feel like that's not right and he shouldn't have done that, but also feel like that's not related enough to the LCK to where he should be punished for it, especially because those things were done 5 to 8 years ago, right? Like this was a long time ago. And so as a result, to punish him for it in 2026 might not necessarily line up with the LCK's values, but it doesn't necessarily mean they condone what happened. So LCK is trapped in this really, really complex situation with PR. And my take is that committing an investigation, if you especially get more third party, more real tax experts in, could uncover something new. Like, you know, you might be able to figure out something more here, or you might be able to say, look, like Ruler's young, like maybe a tax expert said, look, this happens all the time with young celebrities, like I think you should let him go, you know, whatever the case may be. I don't know, I'm not an expert. They're finding the experts. But if they wait a really long time for this, I think making the decision becomes a little bit tougher, like every week and every match day that goes by. Because if you suddenly, you know, let's say give them a 2-match or 4-match suspension in week 3 or week 4, fans will be like, so you just waited until we got really mad and then you did it, or what? Because most of this information is all public. It's from years ago, so nothing has changed. Why did you take so long to make this decision? So LCK has to juggle all of these things right now, and it's really complicated, and it's really hard for Ruler as well, who made his statement, but he's also like already paid what he owed. So how does he handle this? Does he apologize further when in his mind maybe he doesn't necessarily have to, but he wants the fans to feel like he's done what he's supposed to do, like he paid the piper, you know, he paid the consequences, and which was, you know, he paid what he owed. He tried to appeal, he lost, and then he was like, okay, you can have it. It's a really, really complex situation. It doesn't necessarily have a right or wrong answer to it. And that's kind of like, for me, like all the things I want to say based on what we know about this issue on this show, because we obviously have different views in the West and the East in terms of this type of thing. I think Western fans are a little bit more forgiving of this type of thing. And based on what I've seen on Twitter, most people think this is like not even an issue at all from the West. But on the Korean side and in Asia, you know, tax evasion as an issue and this type of like, I guess, investigation is considered to be, you know, it's something you shouldn't do. They think he should have known better. A lot of people think he should have known better, and a lot of people think, and I've seen a lot of comments of people saying, well, if he did this, like, what else could he have maybe done? You know, and like, what does it say about his character? And so there's all these different things you could argue, but it's all speculation. Excuse me, it's all speculation. It's all subjective, right? And so I just wanted to put out like the facts that we know and what I can see and put it on the table here.
As well as the angle of what LCK has to parse through, and that there is a timer for the social response. Because I think in the West, in the West, it's okay. This thing happened. You pay a fine. Generally, if it's not a massive amount, uh, if it was like a Ponzi scheme type financial indiscretion, then yeah, sure, there's jail time there. But here's like the title of the article, and I think this kind of puts it in perspective. It's not like ruler or pro player, like his name loses tax appeal. It's the title of the article here on chosun.com, the Chosun Daily, which is one of, again, another one of the articles, is Asian Games gold medalist ruler loses tax appeal. It's the fact that he has a heightened position in society by winning the Asian Games gold medal or being a gold medalist, and then gets to bypass the military exemption because you were put up as the role model of society, right? You've done something great to bring honor
You
to Korean
represent Korea
society.
now. You represent
Yeah,
Korea now. When you become a gold medalist, you are not just an individual in all senses, but you are representing Korea as a person, as a pro player.
yeah, and so that I think that's why there's an even more stringent magnifying glass on it, and why people are a little are harder on it. And that is a societal thing. That is a societal thing. Like, you can agree or disagree, but that kind of explains why, to people in the West that might not understand, why the why. That is the why of the intensity of it. In because again, in the West, this is something that happens a decent amount of the time. And as someone who has had to do my own taxes in the States, like, it is complicated. It has taken time for me to get it right, and I've had to do revisions and whatnot. And it, I can only imagine what that's like with a full time pro player schedule in periods of his career being overseas, to try and educate yourself on that. Maybe yes. So that's where I'll leave it. That's where I'll leave it for now. We wanted to
Yeah,
just kind of
it's
give the update on that.
he was super young, especially also when this first started happening. Like, I mean, not like, first year of LCK, like I'm a rookie, I'm 17 young, but like, obviously he had suddenly gotten more money than he had ever gotten in his whole life, and also was a world champion, so I was expecting to probably continue to get that money. Good bet on that one. He kept getting a lot of money, kept being successful. And I think there's a lot of things to consider here. The timeline of this is also, weighed in a lot of people's minds because it was so long ago. A lot of people are more willing to forgive. A lot of people are don't care about that at all. You mentioned like representing Korea. I think for a lot of people, especially like some of the Westerners who are upset about this, but also some Koreans are upset because he also represents extremely successful pro players. And
Hmm.
I think that there's still a stigma, even though it's way more accepted in Korea to be a professional player, professional gamer than it is probably anywhere else in the world. I mean, I think that's almost objective.
Yep.
And I think to be a pro player and to be trying to conduct yourself in a positive manner, which I think Ruler overall does as a person.
Yeah.
Um, and to then have this attached to you and then also attached to your game, it's always makes you wonder, like, Faker's paying his taxes, right? Like, is what's going on with some of the other, like Chovy? Like, is he also doing this because he's his teammate? Like, of course that doesn't automatically mean that this is a rampant issue throughout esports, but like, when you're trying to sell this idea to sponsors and we're trying to make this more legitimate than it already is, when you're trying to grow it further, like, these are stains that will hurt people who are like, I hope LCK lasts forever, right? Like, the fans who are like, this is like my favorite sport, I want this to be around forever, we can't have scandals like this because this could ruin everything that's been built over a decade. Like, some people feel that way, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's totally warranted to feel that way, and it feels really scary when you're suddenly seeing again your sport reported on in bigger news outlets than, like, these are the news outlets that might write like, okay, Korean team wins worlds again this year, but otherwise doesn't really reference the LCK.
Yeah.
Is now talking about the LCK in a huge negative scandal. Like, that's not something that people are going to be happy with. That's not something people are going to like. But I think we pretty much like covered this. The meaning for it as to what it means in terms of Gen.G being a maybe, or maybe even a don't, is that if Ruler is suspended, I don't think that they will continue to perform with any substitute that they get, whether it's their challengers, bottom laner. Well, I'm even like slipping on the name of right now. Or if it's their, just a emergency pickup they sign suddenly, some sort of free agent that they get to fill the spot. We've already seen with Poby and other similar situations with COVID subs that it just doesn't really work most of the time. Not to say that they'll like go to last place, but it certainly will hurt some of their momentum in this first round if he is suspended. And I think even though he hasn't been suspended yet, we still have to consider it a possibility
Yeah.
because of the ongoing investigation.
Yeah. So just getting ahead of that and getting the facts out there. So when a decision comes down in the future, we'll cover it here on Let's Cover Korea. That's part of it.
It's Mudai, by the way, who is the Challengers bottom laner, and the Scholars one, which is their like tier 3, is the guy I remember because he was the one who played in Castle Cups. Harusari. And I'm very sorry to say he did not perform well at Kespa Cup at all, and it was really sad.
I didn't like that one.
Yeah, no, it wasn't good. And I hope that he doesn't have to get thrust into this spotlight around this if Ruler gets suspended. But again, we'll just have to wait and see. It's up to the LCK.
There was like a little clamor about it. Deft is out of military later on at the end of the year. He'll be ready in 2027, not in 2026. So Deft probably not an option there. All right.
Yeah.
Well, just like we don't know what great options could be at the bot lane for Gen.G if there was a change that needed to be made. We don't know. There needs a change that needs to be made. We also don't know about these two teams here. Our final two teams in the LCK, Wolf. That was a transition. Who do you want to go with first?
I think we could talk about Bro first. We thought we knew. We really thought we knew. And
Well,
then
I did
Bro,
know. I got my two Bro games correct.
You did say they would lose to Hanwha and that would beat BNK, and that's exactly what happened.
That is what
But
happened.
did you really believe it? Or were you like, it might happen?
I gave it like a 30% chance, and it was mostly because Loki signing and the BNK hangover. Like those were the two. And I think it was a decent matchup into what we last saw from BNK, which was them. BNK are getting away from the let Diablo cook. Don't gank top side, clear, just hold on as long as you can. We're gonna put everything down there. So my thinking was, and it didn't necessarily work out too well in the first game against Hanwha, was okay, I've now accepted it. We're a Teddy team. A Teddy team is give Teddy the resources, let him carry you to the late game. If he's ahead, he can kind of do it himself. But if he's not ahead, unless you help him out and get him ahead, you're not going to win. And I was like, okay, well, B&K, last that we saw, they were fiddling around a little bit. The Diablo, all in on the Diablo gameplay wasn't the way that B&K were going forward after he got 2 pentakills at first stand. So maybe there's a gap there. Maybe there's a hole there. For some reason, they keep putting Kellen on not enchanters in a meta where you can play enchanters. So maybe that's the angle. That was my thinking there. And I think with the Bros, it is similar. We said at the beginning of the show, it's similar to Career on the bottom side of the map. Young support getting a shot, and it was like, ooh, we're not loving what we're seeing out of Nightmare Namgung. But in that second series, and they showed consistency with it because they also let him play Pike in the first series against Hanwha. In the second series, they let him cook with the Elise, and he's impacting the game. He's getting around and getting those roaming ganks off. He was landing engages that weren't Nautilus like where you have to go in and then you're stuck in, or Leona like where you go in and you're stuck in. He had to he got to show some finesse and then roam around because Teddy, Mr. Experience himself, is like, okay, you got me a lead, go impact the map. Was able to do so, roamed all the way to the top lane, got something going. I'm like, okay, Namgoong can
He
play support.
he can do a little gaming. And he loves Elise, by the way. I think it was one of his most played in solo queue when he came on the scene earlier this year. But also he it's his most winning champion across his career period with over 1 game played. Like he has a few 1-0s, right? But he's only played 4 games of it. He's had a really short career, but it's his best champ. Most of his champs still like 30 to 35% win rate, across the board. So, and some of them just like, a bunch of flops, a bunch of 0s, 0-2s, whatever. Um, but he has a really good Elise. They trusted him in that draft. It was a really tough draft to pilot into the Bard pick in the bottom lane, but he looked good. Loki looks really nice on Util, by the way. Like he's playing the Annie, he's playing the Anivia, where he's pumping some damage with the Tibrus, zoning with the Anivia, but he's like setting up good walls, side laning safely. We saw his Azir game against Hanwha Life Esports where he was maybe side laning a little bit too much, but also
Yep.
safely. But I think when Loki's on a pick like this, it makes me wonder. I'm like, should he be like playing Karma mid? And is he like a Zillion guy secretly? We don't know, but obviously not in this meta. But you know what I mean. I think when he's not the main character and he's setting Teddy up for success, and Namgung is playing well and casting is playing serviceable. He's in a Cassante matchup in the second game where he's playing against the Kennen and can kind of just weather the storm. But then the first game, not the greatest game into the Yorick, but does fine. And like they put him on the relatively safe blind pick Jace, which is really only being countered right now by the Yorick. Feels like they kind of are figuring it out. And I still think this roster has a really low ceiling, but they kind of also looked okay against Hanwha.
Yeah.
So in the losses looked kind of interesting. Like Teddy's Mel rebuttals were pretty bad, but otherwise his Mel was pretty good. And the Pike game was really interesting for Namgoong. He actually had like some really cool angles there. So I want to say that we need to see more before I could say this team is as bad as we thought they were going to be. So
God. It's
like right now we don't know because I think they should on paper be worse than this, but we saw some good things, so I guess I can just say I don't know.
so here's the couple cope angles with the Pike game for Namgoong. He was level 5 for just too long. Like he made one of those like dream-esque Pike solo queue roams where he's like, okay, made the impact on bot, I'm going mid. Okay, blew the summoner mid, going top, got the kill top, and was still level 5. So he wasn't able to help like translate that gold and that acceleration into what you need out of the Pike, which is getting the resets, being that extra execution with the ultimate. And that's the cope angle, because game 1 they got uber giga draft gapped with the Jace Pantheon Rise handover, and I think it was because they're in their head, right? We're gonna get Loki, the Cassiopeia, like it's something that he can play. We got the counter pick with the Yorick, and then we want Teddy to be comfortable, and we have high prio on Nico. Like I think because they are cooking in draft, it's like, okay, don't give over the OPs and then cook in the draft. That and even T1 got cut out with the Rise priority, with Coach Tom saying the Rise priority was wrong. So that's my cope angle, but I'm with you where it's like, we just need more games. Like you can very easily chalk up this B&K FearX win to, or loss, or the win against B&K FearX to B&K FearX, like the overseas getting back into the meta, blah, blah, blah. They're still trying to figure out their own stuff.
Yeah, well, we got to talk
And
about them
also
now,
we've
right?
seen bad Nightmare Namgoong. That is the other one. I need to see more consistency out of Namgoong. I need to see Loki not just on utility. Like if the other team's like, here, have Azir, maybe even have Rise, show us you can do something with it. He has to prove that as well. So those are the ones that I think I'm focused on. And then also like, but it's like, okay, Loki beat us or casting beat us. You two beat us because we're just going to focus on the bottom side of the map and there's nothing you can do. That is the next step before then we could go to maybe. But for now is, I don't know, like, it's a great week. I'm glad I got the predictions right. It was awesome to see him win. It was very well, watching a game at Lol Park when you're invested like that is so my hands were sweaty. They did the fan cam thing. It was a great moment. It was great to cash in on that, but also, next week I'm picking KT. Like, what did was like trashing me and stuff. I was like, no way, man. Like, KT is a better team than Bro. Because we know that KT is a
Well,
better team than Bro.
I'm glad you laid it all out for Bro because you're a little bit more passionate about it than I am. But we got to talk about who they beat in B&K. And part of why
Yeah.
we don't know about B&K is because they lost to Bro and looked really out of sorts there.
Yeah.
And we've kind of talked a lot about B&K throughout the day, so I don't want to go super long on this because it's been a really long episode with the ruler drama and everything else. But I do think that while looking completely out of sorts against Bro, like they couldn't have the reads, they were almost playing like they had something to prove. Like, not only did we lose at first hand, but we're actually still good and we're going to stop Bro and do some flashy, cool stuff. And then they just kind of tripped over themselves and got, ruined by really creative drafting from Bro in that series.
Yeah.
They also then were able to play exactly what they needed to do to almost come back and beat Gen.G. Like, I mean, okay, I was so hyped by this when I was casting it that maybe I went a little bit too far, almost rewriting history and saying they almost came back and beat Gen.G. But like they won team fights against Gen.G. They
They
won
did.
team fights against Gen.G, like 8,000 gold down.
They won
And
2
they
in a
made
row,
it,
right? I think it was 2
yeah,
in a
made it
row. It was
to
like,
game.
ooh.
And they didn't get a full wipe or anything like that. Like if they got a full wipe, they would have gotten, the Baron and gotten a bunch of structures on the map, and it wouldn't have been an 8,000 gold lead anymore. They like won a fight where they got like, they got some kills and they walked away the victors, but couldn't turn it into like what happens next. And then they won another fight. You're like, oh, wait a minute. But ultimately they lost the big fight. Chovy did too much damage. They died in the end, but they made it interesting. And like we talked about with Gen.G a little bit earlier on, they're not looking as dominant as they were just a few weeks ago, but they still look good and very clean, and they had a very strong lead, and B&K was able to figure out how to find their win cons in a more extreme way almost than the way that we talked about with Nongshim when they should have lost that game to DNS, right? But then, we're able to come back and do it. Like this was kind of like the crazier version of it. They didn't win, but like they figured out how they could maybe win and won some team fights and punished Canyon. So I still think B&K have a lot of power. I think Raptor is insanely good. I really do. I think Raptor is actually a very, very strong jungle player. I also think Diablo's potential, when realized, is so crazy. Like some of the stuff he was doing in that Israel game was like, he's a psychopath, but I don't know if like an AI was playing Ezreal, he would have like been able to do as much as Diablo tried to do in those moments. I'm being a bit facetious, but like the crazy thing is he looks like a robot because he has no fear and he doesn't miss. And Clear actually looks good. Like I've been one of the biggest critics of Clear, especially because Chronicler I think overhyped him, a lot early on, and I called Chronicler out for it a lot. But I think Clear looks pretty good right now. I think he's no longer a liability to me in my eyes. Is he like as good as Keen? Is he approaching like Zeus levels? I don't think so. But he is definitely above any other top laner, I think, that's in a similar caliber. Like he clears Dudu. No pun intended. Like Dudu is like not even able to touch this guy in my mind in terms of consistency and current form. Clear just looks really good. So I hope that the LCK Cup run was not a fluke. I really I think we all agree that T1 losing to Dplus was a bit of a that was a off read on the day, crazy upset, got reverse swept, bad draft reads, probably should have been in the finals, blah, blah, blah. We've talked about it to death, but B&K proved that they were an elite, strong team that's probably legend level. And I think their performance against Bro was nothing like that, but then they showed it against Gen.G. So it's a don't know for me. Same with Bro. I just don't know. I can't confidently say I think B&K are still a top 4 team. But I can't also say, nah, they're trash. It's over. Like, it was just a fluke. It's done. They're back to Rise Group, the silly 7th place team. Of course, they were going to be 7th. Like, I don't know.
That's funny because you're like optimistic don't know for both. I'm back to pessimistic don't know for B&K, but not I know that they're bad. because of how recent their good performances were. But it's been a little while now since Vikla has had a a solid a solid series. I think he had one solid series at first stand and multiple bad ones. And what I said earlier about what teams will do to Loki, where they're like, here's the rise, carry against us. That's what Bro did to them. It was, here's the rise, Vikla. Show us you could do it. And he couldn't do it. And then so that's one. With me, I don't know what's happened to Raptor. Raptor also is kind of like not he was doing a lot of right place, right time, like Budget Canyon last year. Right now, he's kind of like wrong place, wrong time. And that's been a little tough. He's annoying. He likes to annoy. He did do that annoying thing to Canyon early on in the early game, but then after that, it's like he's not Johnny on the spot, which I feel like was his calling card. And then lastly, we touched on it. I don't know what Edo and the coaching staff are doing. Just play through Diablo. Just that's it. Be that team. You know the draft that you played against Breon in the series? It's okay, Vikla, you're on Galio duty. Guess who you're ulting? This is the only person you're ulting. It's Diablo. They tried to get the Ashe Seraphine. They ended up getting Ashe Karma. It's like, okay, that's close, similar, but not the same, and maybe not exactly the champion that Diablo can do the crazy stuff with. Because, and I think that's why that second game against Gen.G, where he's playing Ezreal, looked so like crazy, where he's like on the edge. It's because he's been caged. They put him in the cage. He's not getting to do like, let me play on the edge with these champions that have a lot of skill expression. The Lucian, the Kaisa, the Zeri, the Ezreal, because some of those that I just named aren't really in the meta. Is really Ezreal, right? So let him do that, let him play that, and win you games. So it's making me like, I don't know what they're doing. So those are my three I don't knows, which is why they're in the I don't know. And now it's the next one is, if they do that, can Diablo be the guy, which that we think we can be, and win them series and propel them to heights? And that is why this team is frustratingly I don't know to me. I think you're like optimistic, I don't know. I'm frustrated, I don't know. So there you go. Those were this week's knows, maybes, and I don't knows, Wolf. That was a long
Yeah.
ass episode. That
And
was fun.
maybes, like, also felt like don't knows. It was hopefully were able to sort of quantify what we're thinking about all these teams after a crazy week of upsets. We should do very quickly predictions for week 2.
Let's do
As
it.
there's some big matches. Dplus versus Hanwha and T1 versus Gen.G. Now, this is, I think, arguably the toughest
That's
day
the
to pick.
hardest one.
Yeah. And the rest of it gets a little bit simpler. I think Dplus versus Hanwha, of the 10 games we've had, is like we'll have after the end of the week, is like the toughest one by far, because Hanwha look, in my mind, like not even 10% of what this roster is capable of. But Dplus also just looked a little silly. Like, they did not look strong in their win against Kiwoom, and they kind of got bopped by Nongshim. So, like,
Wolf, where are you going here? Where are you going here?
my brain is still telling me that, even though, like, it's almost become like my identity to sing to the mountaintops, that Hanwha is actually just not going to pull it off. Like, I still feel like they should win this matchup. I think
That's
that the
crazy.
fundamentals are there. Like, Smash versus Guma is what I'm worried about, because I think Smash, if he just gets, even if like the plane is like an inch off the ground, like, he just will just destroy Guma, because Guma's struggling in a lot of aspects right now. And again, I think it's a lot his fault, but like a lot of it's just like the team dynamic that isn't working for anybody except Kanavi, and so therefore not working for Kanavi. Like, every part of my heart is telling me Hanwha will lose this, but every part of my brain is telling me, like, nah, Dplus is still worse. I'm really low on both of these teams right now, so it's quite tricky. I think I'm gonna lock Hanwha, at least tentatively, here on this show. I'll think about it more before I do my official prediction, but for right now, for the sake of time, because this episode has been insanely long, I'm gonna say HLE.
Good. I mean, I'm still on the HLE train until I'm off it. And yeah, I think D plus are like, I said it earlier. We know that they're fifth. I feel like I know that they're seventh. I changed my mind. I know that they're 7th. And I think Hanwha will be what Dplus were last year in 6th or 5th. They're going to be the level, so they got to win that. T1 Gen.G, Wolf. This
I
one
think
for
this is
me is kind of
it's
this is a tougher one
it's
than the
hard
other one.
because we don't know, like, both of these teams lost to KT, right? And we don't know necessarily what it means. I think we know why. I think T1's loss to KT was more draft related. I think Gen.G's loss was a little bit more gameplay related. And there were some elements of draft that KT had, like, some edges on them there for sure. Like the Zoe pick was really cool and interesting. But I'm gonna say Gen.G because I do think I was more impressed with Gen.G's in-game. Like, despite T1's draft issues, like Doran still got solo killed, right? And we're still seeing draft issues that I don't think Gen.G are gonna showcase necessarily. I think we'll see some funky drafts. I don't think this is gonna be a standard series by any means. I think both these teams will experiment a little bit. It's gonna be very fun. And again, this is assuming that Ruler is still playing on Wednesday, which I think, based on what's happened so far and the fact there isn't an announcement yet as of the time of this recording, I think he'll probably be playing in that matchup against T1. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with Gen.G. I think that they're the stronger overall team in both in game and in draft.
Yeah, I think to me it's the keen diff right now because actually I think what I've really liked what I've seen out of Faker and compared to Chovy, like it's not a ton different, but when things were going wrong, Faker was like, "I got this. You guys just play around the map. It's fine." I like Owner over Canyon right now. Like those two are really good, but Doran needs to wake up and get going. And Duro is playing really, really well as well. So I think we go Gen.G here. But it's so close. I might flip flop on the LCK predictions, but for now I go Gen.G.
I
Let's
feel a
let's
lot
keep
better
moving
about the
on.
Gen. Yeah, I feel a lot better about the Gen than I do about the Hanwha prediction myself. But in the next series, we got Bro versus Kiwoom. So Hanjin versus Kiwoom here. I think I'm pretty confident that Bro will win this one. Like, it doesn't
When's the last
matter
time Bro
lazy
had a
feel.
2-game winning streak, everybody?
No, I
Yeah,
know.
hands in the air.
It doesn't matter if it's lazy feel or Jiwoo. Teddy is looking better, and honestly, Namgung is looking really good. So that one's pretty straightforward for me. And then the same for KT versus Nongshim. Nongshim and KT both went 2-0, but KT beat tougher opponents. They looked way more legit. Nongshim had some big flubs, and I think BDD, maybe in 2021 he couldn't quite get it done, but this time I think he destroys Scout and is the
Yeah.
much stronger player. So
This is
pretty
the case
straightforward
of
day.
both 2-0s are not equal.
Yeah.
Let's move to the DN Automotive Supers against, I guess, the recently lost T1, according to our predictions. There's no way, right, Wolf? There's no way. There's no way.
No, I don't know. I think this is T1. T1 wins. BNK wins. Like, HLE doesn't beat BNK here. I think a lot of people will have HLE here. I will not. I think it could beat D plus, but I think BNK overall stronger than D plus right now. And like, Raptor versus Kanavi is so fun because they're both a very similar type of early game player, except Raptor knows how to stop. And
Uh,
Kanavi does not know how to stop.
yeah, give me T1 Hanwha. I'm one of those Hanwha guys here. Like, I think this is a nice bounce back week for Hanwha, but they have to learn the lesson. Don't just take the wins and be like, everything's fixed. It's learn the lessons. Please, Hanwha. Let's go to Saturdays. It's the Saturday Showdown. The Noodle Boys against Kiwoom DRX, and then Dplus KIA versus Gen.G. This one to me is a 5-gamer, and it's Nongshim and Gen.G.
Uh, Yeah, yeah, it's pretty straightforward. I don't know if it's it might be a 5-gamer. Maybe Nongshim messed something up there, but I think it's
Yep.
gonna be Nongshim Gen.G. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Kiwoom and D plus are pretty low on these, like, white color logo teams in the day match. Even though D plus 2-0'd Kiwoom, like, uh it's Gen.G on the other side. So a little different. Final day of the week. I think also pretty straightforward, but it could end up being,
I
DNS.
don't
Like,
think
if
it's
you're, because DNS
straightforward.
is like in the maybe, if we maybe know, like, Pyoshik is like really good. maybe you're like a Pyosik believer and you think that BNK is a little slumpy right now, and maybe they lose to Hanwha, which I don't expect, but like if they lose to Hanwha, you're kind of like, all right, DNS, maybe just blow this up, right? Like, but it's still Diablo versus current Duckers,
But it's
and Kellen.
it's it's closer versus Vikla.
Yeah, that's true.
Do you trust Vikla? That's where
Nobody
my I
trusts
don't
Vikla.
know. Exactly, but you trust closer. But we did see what the supers are like when closer gets a lead and then Pyosik gets rolling and then they throw the game against Nongshim. So yeah, I was just talking it up. I just wanted to see. I'm with you with this one.
I
It's
also
it's
said
BNK.
clear greater than Dudu, so I'm gonna feel BNK win this one. And then KT versus Bro. It
Ah,
sounds really fun. It
it
sounds
does.
exciting,
It
but
does.
ultimately it's a KT
Sounds
Pred.
what, Wolf? Sounds what?
It's a
Yeah,
KT Pred.
it's a KT Pred and KT go 4-0. It's so exciting. Oh shit, I said it. There it is. Those are our predictions for a 2-hour and change episode of Let's Cover Korea. For everyone who stuck around through it all, we very much appreciate it. But this week one was so like not normal. It was so not normal, and we wanted to get the touch on every single team and give a little bit of a synopsis. Not every week's going to be like this. However, this was a good one. Let us know in the comments here on our show what you want to see and hear and what you think about week number 2. Make sure to like and subscribe at Last Free Nation if you haven't already. Well, final thoughts?
Nah, I mean, I'm just looking forward to seeing if Hanwha can bounce back or not, because that's been the biggest point of contention between you and I in terms of our thoughts on this league. And if they do bounce back, and I'm finally wrong, then hey, maybe that super team becomes a more interesting challenger there in the Legend group.
Yeah.
I'm eyes on Hanwha for a pretty wonky but tough week of matches.
The marathon has started, and it's a reminder to everyone the LCK and the 2026 LoLEsports schedule is a marathon, but we'll have every single week covered here on Let's Cover Korea. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week. Bye bye.